How the codependent misunderstands their own feelings about their borderline. Superman says, if I can save this helpless little borderline, it means my mommy can one day love me. Hi, this is Mike, and this is the one thing that heals BPD and NPD abuse. And today I'm going to focus on the partner of the borderline and what their true feelings and their true intentions are, despite what they think their feelings and their intentions are. Because if you're with a borderline, it means that you completely misunderstand your own feelings. Just like the borderline completely misunderstands their feelings, they conflate abuse with love, and they conflate love with abuse. You also have some misunderstandings about your feelings. I talk about some of this in my book, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend, and I tell you exactly what I did to completely heal from the damage of being in a romantic relationship with a narcissistic abuser. And in my experience, if you do not do the very simple things that I suggest, in my experience, it is very unlikely you will find a complete healing of the pain. I talk about it in my book. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. You can go to audiobooks.thunderwizard.com. All right, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm getting over a very nasty cold. I took a long flight. I'm here in Australia right now for the next probably 6 months. And I got a cold. Didn't get COVID, tested, it wasn't COVID. It was just a run-of-the-mill cold. Remember those? I haven't had one of those in years, but apparently they still exist. In any case, so that's why I sound a little stuffy and why I haven't made a video for a while. So a lot of people probably won't watch this video because the truth of the matter is that most of the people come to this channel to get to the borderline porn. They want to hear me talk about how crazy and screwed up and damaged and horrifically evil and menacing and all that the borderline is. But I do plenty of that in other videos. But the truth is, if you don't understand what I'm going to share in this video, you probably won't heal. And not only is what I'm going to share in this video extremely important to healing from the pain of narcissistic abuse, I have actually found that this is the one main issue for human beings. That any human being, even if they've never been in a narcissistic relationship, if they can't find how to live their life successfully, you've heard of people that just can't make enough money, or I just can't, no matter how hard I try, I just can't this, I just can't that, and I just can't find happiness. This is it. This is the main stumbling block for everything. And if you can not only comprehend this, but learn how to, in this case, do the one thing, with this focus, you can accomplish anything in life. Doesn't mean you won't have issues or problems, but I guarantee you can achieve everything you've ever wanted in life. Spiritually, financially, personally, physically. And so what is that thing? Well, Superman tells us a little bit. First, let's talk a little bit about Superman. Superman is a codependent. Superman is not a hero. How do we know that? Superman doesn't have a life. Superman cannot walk around and be himself. If he's constantly walking around in his Superman suit, which of course is underneath his underneath his, his normal Clark Kent stuff, his normal human suit. Superman, he's got his costume underneath that all the time. That's who he truly is. He truly is this super being. But he can't walk around like that because nobody will treat him as a normal person. And then he has to, his only job is just to serve others. And so Superman gets all of his worth and all of his value from being the hero who saves everybody. And so as long as he's seen as Superman, if he wants to be loved and accepted He has to constantly be helping and saving other people. So what is the definition of codependence? Codependence is not what most people say. Even if you go online and you type in what is codependence, you're going to get definitions like this one. Codependence is when you need to have another person around to feel valuable or something like that. You can't stand living alone and you need to depend on another person for your own happiness. It's nonsense. Please don't let the word dependence fool you. It's an old word that was created a long time ago, and it doesn't mean what you think it means. You think codependent, you get focused on the word dependent, and you think, I'm dependent on somebody. And that, if you are a codependent, the thought that somebody is accusing you of being dependent on somebody else will infuriate you the same way that it infuriates Superman here. If you were to say to Superman, Superman, you're weak and you're dependent on other people, he would say, I am not dependent on anybody. I have, by the way, a fortress of solitude that I go to, and I sit and I mourn in this empty, frozen, the imagery means everything. He's in the North Pole. There's nobody in the North Pole. Nobody can get to the North Pole. Human beings just can't function there. And at the North Pole, it's freezing cold. But Superman, he can tolerate the freezing cold. But the cold is the coldness. There's no warmth. There's no love. It means that when Superman is by himself, he is utterly alone. He feels utterly empty. But he can tolerate it. He doesn't need anybody. That's the whole point of Superman. He's bulletproof. Nothing bothers him except for kryptonite, which that's a whole other issue. But so the codependent, when you say to them you are dependent on other people, the codependent, their cape starts to rustle and flap in the wind, and they say, no, I don't need anybody. I have my own job, I have my own money. In fact, I have been completely alone for 10 years. I don't need anything or anybody. So that doesn't mean that you're not a codependent. When I say the word codependent, I want you to think of Superman. Normally when people say the word codependent, you think of some little baby who needs mommy. And you go, that's not me. I'm Superman. The other thing about Superman is Superman doesn't ever really help anybody. Superman doesn't have seminars where he teaches people how to create their own superpowers. He doesn't give people the ability to learn how to get themselves out of their own problems. He only, deals with things, at the very last minute. People get themselves into ridiculously stupid situations, and they're teetering off the edge of a cliff, in a bus or something like that, and then Superman doesn't even really help them at in that point. What he does is he as the bus, of course he waits until they're just about to fall off and die, and as the bus falls off, he'll swoop up and grab the bus and fly to the top of the mountain. And he'll drop off the bus. Now, they're stuck at the top of the mountain. They have to wait for the Air Force to come and, with helicopters and things like that. That's a very typical thing. Or, Lois Lane gets tossed out of a window and he waits until she's halfway down. And then he swoops in and picks her up. And then she's, oh, Superman, you saved me. Now, Clark Kent is with Lois Lane all the time. And Clark Kent is there for her. But Lois doesn't want that. That's boring. She doesn't want stability. She doesn't want somebody that's going to have her back and see her for who she is and love her for who she is. No, she wants Superman to wait until the last minute to come swooping in. And this is your fantasy if you're a codependent. Your fantasy is that you are bulletproof, that you need nothing, you need no one, you are fully self-contained. You misunderstand what it means to be individuated. But that's your goal. You want to be fully individuated, fully, totally self-empowered, needing nothing and no one, but you don't get any love from that. You only get love when you do something. Superman only gets praised, yay, Superman, after he catches the bus or saves the damsel or puts out the fire with his breath or, kills the evil narcissist. That's the only time he gets praised. The rest of the time, nobody gives a crap about him. And he knows that he needs to stay out of sight. He needs to fly away the moment he has done his job. And this is you. You have no value in your mind. You have no value, especially to your borderline. You have no value except for what you do. When you swoop in and you save the borderline, that's when you have value. The borderline has hired you for this job because, as you know, the only thing the borderline is looking for is somebody who will regulate their incredibly dysregulated emotions. Their intense emotions that are threatening to overwhelm them and destroy them. They are literally on the verge of death in their own mind at any given moment. And the worst thing that can happen is something or someone can stimulate them and those feelings threaten to overwhelm and kill them. Your job is to regulate those emotions. And you can regulate those emotions in all kinds of ways. You can regulate them when they idealize you, which of course you think is love. You conflate idealization with love, and it's not. Idealization is what happens when Superman shows up in his cape. People go, oh my God, Superman. And you think that's love, and it's not. It's actually quite the opposite. They love Superman. Yay, Superman, do a trick. Superman, save somebody. Superman, you're just sitting there. Come on, do something. Come on, you're a circus performer. And the borderline is only using you for what you do for them. The borderline literally has no ability to look at you, see you for who you are, because they're constantly projecting onto you they're parentifying you all the time, which is why they either love you or they hate you. Because if you were just a normal person to them, they would be able to tolerate the idea that you're not perfect, that you have needs, and that you benefit them based on your humanity, not on what you do. But they don't see that. They see a mommy or a daddy. They see a Superman or a Superwoman. And if you aren't doing something super amazing, they want nothing to do with you. I'll give you an example. I've shared this once before. Forgive me, I'm going to have to go into, less than savory talk here. But my borderline and I were having sexual relations. And I was, shall we say, I was servicing her, meaning there wasn't anything that I was getting out of it at the moment. And, I know what I'm doing in that department. And I was doing that. And she started getting very upset. Like she was like grinding her teeth. She was so upset. And she was saying, I don't care what you're doing to me physically. I want you to love me energetically. I want your energy. And I just had to stop because nobody had ever talked to me like that. And I didn't know what she was talking about. She was saying, come on, you're a shaman. You can put energy into me. Do it. And of course I couldn't. What she was asking for was completely impossible. What she wanted was to be regulated on the deepest level. She wanted me to have this magical ability to put thunderbolts into her and magically, like God, just make all of her pain and all of her dysregulation go away. And because I wasn't doing that, even though I was working my tail off, trying to please her, that wasn't enough. I had to be superhuman. And I'll never forget that because it was so unrealistic. It would, because what happens with the borderline is if you meet them, when they're idealizing you and you just do something normal, it's the best thing that's ever happened because they allow themselves to have a pleasant experience. But once you get past that, then the bar gets raised and you need to become more and more superhuman. And I never forgot that. And that's what I see every time when I hear borderline talking about wanting to be loved. I know at some point it's going to get to something like that. Might not be exactly like that because that was her, psychotic fantasy, but it's going to be something along those lines. You're going to be required to be superhuman, and you won't be able to be. And the other thing is, even if I did what she wanted, even if I had the ability to do what she wanted, and even if that was enough for that session, next time it would have been something that I wasn't capable of doing. So you're being set up. You're being set up to be superhuman. They can't tolerate you not being beyond perfect. They can't tolerate it. So, with a borderline, you definitely have to be Superman or Superwoman. And that's your job, meaning they don't see you for who you are. They don't love you for who you are. And so this is why Superman goes to his fortress of solitude. I mean, it's just the perfect metaphor. It's fortress. Nobody can get in. He's completely safe. He's just, what does he have in there? He's in there with the recordings of his dead parents. This means narcissistic parents, because narcissistic parents are dead parents. In fact, I remember this as a little kid. I remember being 4 years old. I think I was 4 years old. And it was in the middle of the night, and I came walking into my parents' bedroom. And I kid you not, I looked in there and I saw 2 skeletons. This was obviously my unconscious. My unconscious knew that my parents were narcissistic. My parents weren't there. They weren't capable of loving me. And I was really shocked, and my parents heard me turn the lights on, and then they looked human again. But that's the same. That's Superman in the Fortress of Solitude. He's looking at videos of his dead father, telling him, guiding him. Means he doesn't have anybody who loves him. There's nobody in the universe because his home planet has been destroyed. So again, your home base has been destroyed through some kind of narcissistic dysfunction. So I told you I was going to get to the most important thing. So the bottom line is that what the codependent wants, which is the same thing that the borderline wants, because the borderline is also codependent. What the codependent wants is the codependent wants to get mom's love. Because that's the only thing, it's the only thing in the universe that will kickstart the individuation process within a human being. And it only happens within the first 2 years of life. If you don't get it in the first 2 years of life, or in some cases, the first 4 or 5 years of life, you're never going to get it. So if you're like me, I obviously got enough individuation from my mother, the first couple years of my life, that I didn't become a borderline or a narcissist. But I became severely codependent. And that's because later on in my, I won't get into it, but my mom did some really borderline things to me when I was like 4 and 5 years old. It just, and I, it's taken me, my entire life to understand it and learn how to deal with it. But same is true for me as with everybody else. I didn't realize it up until just 3 years ago when I started this channel. I didn't realize it, and it was because I was with my borderline. That the one thing that I had been seeking my whole life was to feel as though I could be truly loved and truly seen. And the only person that can do that for you is your mother. Nobody else can do that. And so if you try and get it from somebody else, you never will. And in fact, when you are seen and you are loved by, just normal humans, it won't be enough. It won't be good enough. You'll find that boring. So what ends up happening is you conflate the abandonment, the neglect, the lack of love. You equate the lack of love with love. You totally confuse it. And so when you run into somebody who you can see with your radar, we all have it. Borderlines have it. They can see if you've got that wound that they can manipulate to make you want to become Superman for them. And you can see within them their emptiness and the reality that they're going to neglect you. You can see that on an unconscious level. And what you really want is you want to find somebody who will at the very least neglect you and not give you that emptiness feeling. That feeling that that Superman has in his fortress of solitude, where the closest he can get to connecting with somebody is the tape of his dead father from his destroyed home planet. It's the closest he can get to ever feeling seen and loved. So the closest you ever get to feeling seen and loved is when you're with somebody who, like your parents, promise that they will meet that need, but they never do. And that's exactly what the borderline does. When the borderline first meets you and idealizes you, when that first happens, you, for the first time in your life, your experiences, you feel as though I'm finally seen and loved. And the borderline isn't seeing and loving you. They're idealizing you like Superman. So you've been walking around feeling like you are Superman, which means I'm a real person. I have real feelings. I have value. And then the borderline comes along and idealizes you and turns you into something superhuman, which you think is unconditional motherly love. That's the beauty of the narcissist and the borderline. When they idealize you, what they are giving you is motherly love. And this is what mothers do. Mothers look at their infant and their children and they say, this person is unique and perfect. And I see the individuality, and there is nobody in the universe like my child. And they give that feeling to the child. Your mom didn't do that, or you wouldn't be here. Her mom didn't do that, or she wouldn't be a borderline. And so when you run into somebody that gives you that false nurturing, mothering love, which it's false, it's not real. You get that switch gets flipped on and you feel like you've finally found what you were looking for. Of course you haven't. And so then that's why immediately you fall madly in love, because what has happened is you have confused the love of your mother, which is an empty love, for true romantic love. You've completely mistaken that. But then what ends up happening, because that switch has been flipped on, now you are on a mission. You've had a taste of it. You've had a taste of the perfect love that mother can give to you. And you know you'll never find this anywhere else. And then once you then respond, then the borderline is going to fall, is going to do just what your mother did. The borderline is going to disappear. All of the love is going to go away. Either they're going to become cold, or they're going to become like your mother. They're going to become dysregulated, and they're going to need you to regulate them. Or they're going to split on you, or they're going to be outright abusive. In any case, you will be painfully aware that the promise that was given to you is now being taken away. And there is a threat that you won't ever get this love. And what that means is then that will flip on a survival switch in your nervous system. You will regress to who knows however old you were when you were damaged. And you will then be in a trauma bond loop where you will be unconsciously going after the promise of mom's love, which is what your whole childhood was about. Her whole childhood was the same. The promise that mommy will love me. And then you end up in that narcissistic wheel of death, where you are in the intermittent reinforcement abuse, which is they give you just enough reinforcement to give you the hope that you're going to finally find love, which could be the hope that they'll finally see the light, that they'll finally see your love, that they'll finally go to therapy, or that they'll finally love you, they'll finally trust you. This hope will be sprung in you, and no matter how bad the abuse is, you'll put up with it because the hope of getting that perfect love will be there and will drive you to put up with things you wouldn't normally put up with. So you understand that, right? And then, of course, what happens is the borderline never ever delivers on that promise, and they will ultimately discard you in the worst possible way, and that could take decades. If you're on this channel, you've already experienced some of that, so you know what I'm talking about. So now let me get to what I said, what I promised in this video, which is that the one thing that will give you the ability to be successful in anything in life, and that is understanding that, when you see somebody who's homeless, my brother, if he's still alive, he might not be, but if my brother is still alive, he's homeless. And I grew up with him, the same house. So whatever story he would tell you, if you were to talk to him on the street about how come you're homeless, he would probably blame it on me, for one thing, but I'm his little brother. Somehow his little brother, who's 5 years younger than him, somehow destroyed his life. That's the kind of craziness that comes out of him. But you talk to homeless people, you talk to people who just can't seem to get their life together. What you're going to find is, of course, there's going to be an evil villain. What they're like a collapsed Superman. There's an evil villain that has done it to them. And whatever it is that they say, the reason why life won't allow them, etc., etc., etc. Here's what's really going on. So understand, as I've said many times before, that to your infant nervous system self, the love of mother is more important than anything. Because as I've said, infants will die of lack of love long before they will die of cold or starvation or anything else. So you actually have built in within you a response that tells you if you don't get mom's love, you will die. And so you will do all kinds of crazy, insane, stupid things in the false belief that by doing it, you'll get mom's love. This is what makes people addicted to alcohol. This is what makes people addicted to drugs. It's what makes people addicted to sex, gambling, and, narcissistic relationships. It's that because they experienced that pain of rejection, that emptiness, that fortress of solitude, because they experienced that as a kid, they think that's what love is. And you conflate that. Borderline, perfect example. Borderline will stay with a narcissist, an abusive narcissist, far longer than they will with you, because the abusive narcissist will never deliver on the promise, which is what keeps them in it. The reason why they discard you is because you deliver on the promise of love. When you deliver on that promise, you then, I don't want to dive into that hole, but that triggers them to want to destroy you because their mother didn't love them. So if they allow themselves to let you love them, it means they will be betraying the introjected mother inside of them who won't ever love them. And they think if they reject their true narcissistic mother, that they will die. The same is true with everybody else in the world. To some degree, if you can't find love, if you can't find success, if you can't find whatever it is that you're struggling with in life that you never seem to be able to find, and other people are able to get it, it's because that's the thing that you conflate with mother's love. So, I'll give you my brother's life as an example. I've known my brother, I haven't had any interaction with him for quite some time now, but I knew him his whole life. Up until the last time I saw him, he threatened to shoot me, and I said, that's it. That's the last contact you'll ever have with me. But I've had reports about him, and he's had multiple opportunities to get off the street. But it means he would have to do things like go into a halfway house, or he'd have to go into some kind of state-funded program. Even getting funding from the government, just to give him money to live on. He refused all of that. That makes no sense. If what he says is he needs to get off the street, and he rejects every single opportunity to get off the street, then there's a serious disconnect here. And the disconnect is that my brother believes on an unconscious level that he doesn't deserve because of our mother. And he lived it. He lived with my mom his whole life until she got senile and was incapable of taking care of him. And then he ended up on the street. So the only thing he's ever wanted is to be with my mother and have my mother love him. And when that never happened, and then she finally got sick and died, he was left on the street. He had multiple opportunities to get help. He refused all of them. It's because he's still waiting around for my mom to tell him he's a good boy, even though she's dead. And that's what's going on with the person who can never get out of debt, the person who can never find love, the person who can never find success. It means that getting out of debt, or finding success, or finding love, or losing that weight, it means that those things represent a revolting against your introjected mother. So there's an introjected mother in there that says, you're only good to me if you're overweight. You're only good to me if you're poor. You're only good to me if you're homeless. You don't deserve to have your own place to live. You don't deserve to have your own business. You don't deserve to have good health. You don't deserve to be off drugs. There's an introjected, narcissistic, borderline mother inside of your head telling you that you don't deserve love. You deserve to live in your fortress of solitude. That's the best that you get. You need to just play old videos of, the hope of what you could have been, and then live on that. And if you can understand that your survival instinct, that what my brother didn't or doesn't understand is that the reason why he rejects every single opportunity to get him off the street is because he believes that if he does that, my mom will reject him. Now, I know for a fact that my mom programmed with that, because I heard her say that to me. There were times earlier in life when I battled back and forth between, being on my own and living with my parents, and the pull was very strong, and I'd always end up back living with them, as an adult. And then I remember one time I became aware of this because I've been doing, the one thing my whole life. Because I've been doing that, I became aware of this, and in my adulthood, I said to my mom, I'm going to have to cut myself off from you financially. I'm not going to take any more handouts from you or any more money. Because what I was doing is I was sabotaging myself so I would end up in that space to have mom give me money, and then mom would always give me money, and then mom would always shame me about it and say, you really got to get yourself together, and so that's the game that we would play. And then I would feel like, gosh, I really wish I could get it together. And then I finally, realized that as a result of doing the one thing, and I said, I'm going to cut myself off from you, and I'm not going to take any more money from you, so don't offer me money ever again. I won't take it from you. At which point, she then revealed her true personality, which she had been sort of hiding this whole time. And she said, you'll never make it without me. You can't function on your own. You're nothing without me. And I was like, whoa, no wonder it's been so hard. That was introjected in my brother. Whether she verbally said that to him or not, the message was very clear. You'll never be anything without me. And truth is, now that she's gone, if he's still alive, he's been homeless ever since she got sick and couldn't take care of him. And that's why he refuses to take any option off the street. That's why you refuse to do the one thing. Those of you who refuse to do the one thing, who say, I don't need to do that, I'll do the other 3 things that you mentioned, I'll go no contact, I'll do this, I'll watch your channel endlessly, I'll do all of that, but I don't need to do the one thing because I'm not a codependent. The reason why you say that is because you have a little introject inside of you saying, if you do that one thing, you'll become individuated and you'll be no good to me. You'll never get my love if you become individuated. And again, that is stimulating a survival instinct within you. It is stronger than any, you could sit there and talk to my brother common sense all day long. You will not talk him out of whatever insanity he's got that's keeping him on the street, assuming he's still alive. I think he's probably dead, but you see what I mean? So this is the thing for you as well. And the only thing in my experience that will give you the ability to deal with that is doing the one thing, which I talk about in my book, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend. I talk about it on this channel. If you put half an ass crack hair effort into it, you can find it on this channel. But the majority of you won't. And the reason why you won't isn't because it's not easy to do. Because it is. It's very easy. It's completely free. You can do it from home. Cost you nothing. And you can do it online. But you won't do it. And the reason why you won't do it, you'll say it's because I'm not a codependent, or I don't like the whole God thing, or I don't like this about it, or I don't like that. You're going to give me all kinds of reasons why you don't want to do it. But the real reason you don't want to do it is because there's an introject of your abusive mother telling you, if you do that one thing, you have no value to me and I will never love you. And your survival instinct will kick in so hard that you will be totally irrational and you'll do everything but the one thing that will actually kill that introject. You will have to psychologically, not physically, symbolically and psychologically, you will have to kill your mother. That's the one thing my brother can't do. If my brother could psychologically, symbolically kill his mother in his own brain, he could get off the street and he could be successful. But he never will. Most people never do because it's built into us. Unfortunately, when it goes the right way, it makes people absolutely, bulletproof and successful in life because they have an introject that tells them their value is simply because they exist. But if your introject tells you your value is based on what you do for me, you'll be nothing without me, then you'll never be able to get over whatever that block is that's preventing you from having whatever it is that you want. The only way out, in my experience, is to do the one thing. You don't believe me? Give it a try. Follow my suggestions that I give in this book to the letter. If you do everything that I suggest in that book and it still doesn't work, you can come back and tell me and I'll tell the world that was your experience. Nobody's taken me up on that challenge yet. Why? Because everybody who's followed my advice to the letter, they've learned to kill the introject in their mind, and they've learned to completely become the thing they never thought they could do. I offer that to you, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend, on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle, audiobooks.thunderwizard.com, or just put half a second into looking for it on this channel and you'll find it. So that's why Superman is saying, if I can save this helpless borderline, it means my mommy can one day love me. All right, that's it. I think I beat this horse to death. I'm sure we'll revisit it. That's it. I'll see you guys next time.